With 1 year between them, the iPhone 6s and 7 really don't feel all that different, except for maybe the lack of headphone jack on the latter phone. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and now that the 10s is out, we're going to do a full comparison of which phone is most worth buying right now. Should you get the iPhone 6s or the iPhone 7? The iPhone 6s was released 3 years ago and the 7 2 years ago, and so as you would imagine, there isn't a huge amount of differences between the two, although I would say the iPhone 7 Plus is significantly better than the 6s Plus, but I'll get into that in a minute. I have done reviews on both of these phones separately if you want to see that. This is just going to be a really quick comparison going over the pros and cons of each phone, and at the end I'll tell you which I think is the better value for you to actually buy if you're interested. Anyhow, let's start with the iPhone 6s. It was released in 2015 to pretty positive response, and it basically improved upon the iPhone 6 in every single way possible. It was more durable, was way faster, had a better camera, and was really just the complete package. The iPhone 6 may have been the best-selling smartphone ever, but it had a ton of issues, and the 6s fixed nearly all of them. The iPhone 7 was launched in 2016 to a fairly lukewarm response, especially due to the lack of headphone jack. Straight up, if you still need a headphone jack for some reason, the iPhone 6s is the best iPhone you can get, and will always be. But I implore you to spend a little bit of money and get the AirPods, because trust me, they are worth it. They really don't sound that bad, and the convenience of being completely wireless makes up for any audio quality, at least in my opinion. But hey, I'm not an audiophile by any means. Anyways, the iPhone 7 brought a small redesign that looks way better in my opinion than the 6s, as well as a capacitive home button. Basically, the home button doesn't physically click anymore, but instead vibrates in a way that mimics a click. It sounds weird, but you get used to it pretty quickly, and I actually prefer it. It makes the phone faster as it is able to register your click quicker. The iPhone 7 also got significant improvements in the CPU and camera departments, as is the norm with every iPhone upgrade. Let's start this off with the designs. Both phones don't look too different, although the iPhone 7 has way more color options and just feels more sleek overall. The antenna bands don't go across the back like the 6s does, but instead goes around the edges, which I like a lot because in my opinion it always made the 6s look a bit cheap. The camera is a bit bigger on the iPhone 7 and the bump isn't as awkward, it's kind of more smooth. The 7 actually got optical image stabilization, which was only on the bigger 6s Plus before. Speaking of the Plus models, something the 7 Plus has is a secondary telephoto camera lens that lets you have an optical 2x zoom. It's very helpful, although not necessarily a phone seller. It also lets you take portrait shots, although you'll be getting better ones on the 8 Plus and newer. What you're seeing now is actually of the 8 Plus, but the process is pretty much the same for the 7 Plus. Spec-wise, the cameras on the 6s versus the 7 are fairly similar. The rear shooters are both 12 megapixels, and you can shoot in 4K at 30 frames per second. Video and photos will look great on both, although you are going to get some slightly sharper results on the 7. As you can see here, there aren't a huge amount of differences in the photos, they both look pretty good, and while I would say the 7 looks better, not by a large margin. Now where things do improve is with the video. As you can see, this video here is being taken at the exact same time, and the iPhone 7 looks so much smoother, and that's because of the optical image stabilization. So if that appeals to you, then the 7 is the obvious choice. When it comes to battery life, I've gotten very close results with barely any difference, although the 7 Plus seems to reign supreme. If you're wanting a better battery, I'd definitely go for the 7 Plus, but otherwise you should be able to get a day out of any other phone. The 6s Plus is also pretty good. Just because it's bigger, it has a bigger battery. As mentioned before, you're losing out on the headphone jack with the iPhone 7, but what you are gaining are way better stereo speakers. Sound will come out of the bottom speaker as well as the earpiece, and things actually sound really good. The 6s sounds horrible in comparison, so if you're wanting the best possible speaker, the 7 is a much better buy. But again, you're losing out on the headphone jack, so it's kind of a win-lose. And when it comes to processing speeds, the iPhone 7 is quite a bit faster with the A10 chipset over the A9. The 7 Plus again reigns supreme here with 3 gigs of RAM. You're gonna notice apps staying open in the background longer with the 7 Plus, as well as just everything feeling more fluid. Although on iOS 12, the 6s does still hold up extremely well, and certainly doesn't feel 3 years old, but overall, no surprise here, the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus are better phones. But are they the better value? You can't actually buy the iPhone 6s new from Apple anymore, but you can the 7, with it starting at $450 on their website. I'd say that's a bit much, but if you're buying new on contract, you should be able to find a deal at this point. That said, I don't actually recommend buying the iPhone 7 because I think the 6s is at a better value. Now, if you're buying on contract, the 7 is the way to go, although I'd say the iPhone 8 would be better, link in the description to the review review of that phone. But if you're wanting used or refurbished, the iPhone 6s is at a great price at under $200 on eBay.com. That's a steal for what is really still a solid device, and if you need a phone on a budget, the 6s is your best choice. The 7 on the other hand typically goes for more like $300, $350, which isn't bad, but only for $100 more you can find like an iPhone 8 used, and that would be the better buy. The iPhone 7 is kind of the middle of the road between two extremes, the iPhone 6s and the iPhone 8. I would say don't go for it. Go for either the iPhone 8 or the 6s and kind of ignore the 7. While it's a good phone still, it's not as good as the 8 and it's not that much better than the 6s, so I just don't think it's worth the extra money over the 6s. Mind you, if you have an iPhone 7 right now, I think you're totally fine. I just don't think you should necessarily buy one. And if you want a Plus model iPhone, don't buy the 6s. That's important. Either get the iPhone 7 Plus or 8 Plus. And again, I'd recommend the 8 Plus. The 6s Plus just doesn't really have any benefits over the smaller model except for a bigger battery and optical image stabilization. So I don't really think there's any point of getting it for the majority of people. But the 7 Plus or 8 Plus has a extra gig of RAM, that telephoto lens, it's just better. And so if you want a Plus phone, yeah, 7 Plus or 8 Plus is the way to go. But if you don't really care about getting a bigger phone, the smaller models are the better value, and the smaller iPhone 6s is a great deal. And I'd fully recommend it if you're more budget oriented and want something used or refurbished. Or if you can find a really good deal on contracts like $0, maybe the iPhone 6s is worth it, but I don't know, I'd spend a little bit more money and get the 7 or 8 personally, because you're gonna get at least an extra year or two of support, and it's just gonna feel that much faster. So long story short, the best value phone here is the smaller iPhone 6s if you're looking to buy used or refurbished. If you want something new, I'd actually recommend going up to the iPhone 8, but the 7 is still a great phone if you can't afford to do better, and it is a better value than the 6s new, at least in my opinion. And don't buy the 6s Plus, get the 7 or 8 Plus as they offer more features than their smaller counterparts. And with that, I think I'm pretty much done here. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was helpful or interesting, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram if you want to keep up, links below, and with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.